He is one of the most wanted criminals in South America. The leader of the Tren de Aragua in Venezuela, Hector Guerrero Flores, alias El Niño Guerrero. And this is his robbery and theft, homicide, kidnapping, extortion, drug trafficking, weapons possession, and prison escapes. 2 days ago, a massive operation was carried out at the prison where this dangerous criminal operates.
So you can get a better understanding of who he is. The FBI says Serrano is second in command of Tren de Aragua, a violent gang that organized in a Venezuelan prison. Agents believe he is calling the shots for TDA's operations across the U.S., even though they're not sure he's ever set foot here.
The Justice Department now moving to drop charges against the man accused of being a top 3 MS-13 gang leader living here in Northern Virginia. This was someone described as taking part in violent gang activity.
Prosecutors say Saenz is the leader of MS-13. Prosecutors say he's responsible for ordering and approving the killings of 8 people, 3 attempted murders, and other crimes. The prosecution says most of his victims were innocent.
The FBI's 10 most wanted has been arrested in Mexico. Francisco Roman Bardales, believed to be a senior leader of the violent MS-13 gang. Officials say he was positively identified in the state of Veracruz, taken into custody, and be transferred to Mexico City before being deported to the U.S.
From the prisons of Venezuela to the quiet suburbs of New York, a hidden war is raging. These aren't just criminals, they're warlords. Their gangs span continents. Their crimes leave nations shaken. And some of them are still free. Violent gangs are no longer just street-level threats. Today, they operate like multinational cartels with foot soldiers, financial networks, and international command structures. From Tren de Aragua in South America to MS-13 on the U.S. East Coast, these criminal empires have transformed into global syndicates, rivaling terrorist organizations in scale and brutality. In this documentary, we profile 4 of the most dangerous gang leaders alive, men who commanded armies, trafficked across borders, and brought bloodshed from Caracas to Queens. Some are behind bars, others are on the run, but all have left behind a legacy of terror. These are their stories, raw, disturbing, and very real. This is the terrifying true story of the world's most dangerous gang leaders and how close their empires have come to your front door.
Once again, the attention of judicial authorities is focused on alias Niño Guerrero, the big boss of the mega gang Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan organization with tentacles throughout South America. This is Hector Guerrero Flores, who was born in 1983 in the city of Maracay, the capital of Aragua State. He first became known to the authorities in 2000.
Armored cars, grenades, and 11,000 men. That's what the Venezuelan police used to dismantle the Tocorón prison, a penitentiary and base of operations for the Tren de Aragua. Move forward, move ahead. This Wednesday, the Venezuelan regime ordered the evacuation of the prison built in 1982, but which for more than a decade has had characteristics more like an all-inclusive resort. Baseball field, swimming pools, playgrounds, nightclub, restaurants, and even a zoo. All the comforts for the Tren de Aragua and for its leader, Hector Guerrero Flores, imprisoned for several years after having escaped in 2012 from the same place and from which now again nothing is known of his whereabouts. But who is El Niño Guerrero? He is described by Rona Risquez, a Venezuelan journalist who has tracked the Tren de Aragua. He is the supreme leader, the one who gives the orders and makes the decisions.
Announced the arrest of a prominent member of the Tren de Aragua, the brother of its leader, without revealing his identity. The Caracas newspaper El Espectador reported that the individual is Jason Robert Guerrero, none other than the brother of Niño Guerrero, who is the head of the criminal organization, although there is still skepticism about his actual influence within the gang. Jason Robert Guerrero Flores is the brother of the well-known Niño Guerrero, whose real name is Hector Guerrero Flores, who has an international arrest warrant after escaping from Tocorón prison in Venezuela in September of last year.
Hector Niño Guerrero Flores is no ordinary gangster. He is the elusive, iron-fisted leader behind Tren de Aragua, Venezuela's most feared criminal organization, one that has exploded from prison roots into a transnational menace. Flores rose to power inside Tocorón prison, one of Venezuela's most chaotic penitentiaries. There, he earned the title of pran, a term used in Venezuela for inmate bosses who control entire prison wings. But Guerrero didn't just control a wing, he effectively turned Tocorón into his personal kingdom. With bribed guards and loyal foot soldiers, he ran operations from behind bars with shocking impunity. Under his leadership, Tren de Aragua began as a prison gang extorting inmates, but quickly transformed into a syndicate dealing in drug trafficking, extortion, weapons smuggling, and human trafficking. The collapse of Venezuela and the migration crisis gave the gang a fresh pipeline of vulnerable people, especially women who were frequently kidnapped, enslaved, or trafficked across borders. Despite being sentenced to 17 years in prison, Guerrero's incarceration was almost symbolic. In 2012, he escaped from Tocorón with the help of guards, but was later recaptured. Even then, he operated freely within the prison. He was seen outside the facility multiple times, including one bizarre moment when he boarded a luxury yacht supposedly under an official prison permit. By the time he officially completed his sentence in late 2022, Tren de Aragua had already established footholds far beyond Venezuela with confirmed operations in Colombia, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, and even parts of the United States. In September 2023, Venezuelan security forces raided Tocorón in a major crackdown meant to dismantle the gang. Hundreds of Tren de Aragua members were arrested, but Guerrero was nowhere to be found. Intelligence sources believe he escaped Venezuela shortly after finishing his sentence, possibly crossing into the United States through Mexico. In the US, the gang's fingerprints are already being felt. In Aurora, Colorado, police shut down an apartment complex after discovering armed Venezuelan men linked to assaults and kidnappings, all tied to Tren de Aragua.
10. It's scenes coming out of a movie as the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua are seen breaking into apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. This is according to our sister station in Denver. There you can see the group well armed and forcing an apartment door open and making their way in. This has raised concerns amongst residents and Colorado state law enforcement officials. The city of Aurora is issuing a statement today in the wake of national attention following the video's release.
As of today, Hector Niño Guerrero Flores remains at large. The United States has placed a $5 million reward for information leading to his capture, branding him as one of the hemisphere's most dangerous fugitives. With his vast criminal network still active across the Americas, Flores is no longer just a Venezuelan problem, he's a regional threat.
The moment she learned just how long 30-year-old Alexi Saenz, also known as Blasty, would remain in prison, convicted of Alvarado's 15-year-old daughter as she walked home from her Brentwood school in September of 2016. He got 68 years. Prosecutors say Saenz is the leader of MS-13. Prosecutors say he's responsible for ordering and approving the killings of 8 people, 3 attempted murders, and other crimes. The prosecution says most of his victims were innocent. This year, Saenz pleaded guilty for his role in the The case prompted President Donald Trump to make several visits to Long Island during his first term in the White House. In court, Saenz apologized to the families of his victims, but none accepted it, like the father of Michael Johnson. Defense attorneys painted Saenz as remorseful, saying he was abused as a child by his father, has an IQ of only 72, and his, quote, damaged brain means he, quote, can't control his impulses. Prosecution says Saenz still managed to run the gang from inside the prison walls, saying while in federal custody, he smuggled in contraband, including 18 cell phones, marijuana, and alcohol.
In the quiet neighborhoods of Brentwood and Central Islip on Long Island, New York, an invisible war was being waged. At the center of it stood Alexi Saenz, known on the streets as Blasty or Plaky, a feared and ruthless leader of the Sailors Loco Salvatruch's West Side clique, one of MS-13's most violent factions on the East Coast. Between 2016 and 2017, Saenz unleashed a wave of violence designed to cement his gang's dominance. Under his leadership, members of the Sailors Clique carried out a string of brutal deletions, machete attacks, and calculated executions not only against rival gangs, but against anyone who stood in their way. The most horrifying example came in September 2016, when two teenage girls, Kayla Cuevas and Nisa Mickens, were savagely met their demise near their high school. The attack was ordered by Saenz himself, reportedly in retaliation for perceived disrespect and gang rivalry. Their bodies were discovered beaten and mutilated with machetes, sparking nationwide outrage and bringing MS-13 into the political spotlight. But the deletions didn't stop there. Prosecutors say Saenz personally ordered at least 8 deletions, as well as multiple attempted deletions, arson attacks, and drug distribution operations. He used proceeds from narcotics sales and extortion to fund further gang activity, buying firearms and sending money back to MS-13 leaders in El Salvador. His clique operated with militaristic precision, enforcing loyalty, executing rivals, and terrifying entire communities into silence. Federal investigators built a meticulous case over years. In July 2024, Saenz finally pleaded guilty to federal racketeering charges and admitted responsibility for the 8 deletions and other violent crimes. Then, on July 2, 2025, justice was served. A federal judge in Central Islip sentenced him to 68 years in prison. Today, Saenz sits behind bars. His bloody legacy remains a grim reminder that gang warfare isn't confined to inner cities or border towns. It can erupt in the middle of suburban America.
Fugitives is in custody this morning. Francisco Javier Roman Bardales was turned over to U.S. authorities in San Diego after being arrested in Mexico. Allegedly a high-ranking leader of the M-13 criminal organization accused of taking part in drug trafficking, kidnappings, and other illegal activities.
Francisco Javier Roman Bardales, known within MS-13 circles as Veterano de Tribus, wasn't just another gang member. He was a general, a founder of MS-13's Ranfla in-laws kills. The gang's elite ruling body. Roman Bardales held a position of terrifying influence, directing a transnational criminal machine that stretched from the barrios of El Salvador to the streets of the United States. For over 2 decades, Roman Bardales reportedly orchestrated some of the gang's most violent and calculated operations. As a top-tier strategist and enforcer, he commanded cells across El Salvador, Mexico, and the U.S., maintaining tight control over weapons distribution, drug trafficking, extortion rackets, and targeted deletions. According to a federal indictment, Roman Bardales helped transform MS-13 from a loosely connected street gang into a narco-terrorist organization. The charges against him are sweeping: conspiracy to commit terrorism, material support for terrorists, international drug trafficking, alien smuggling, and racketeering. U.S. officials allege that he coordinated violence not just for profit but for power, vengeance, and gang supremacy. By early 2025, his crimes had placed him squarely in the crosshairs of American authorities. In February 2025, the FBI added Roman Bardales to its 10 most wanted list, branding him a key senior leader in MS-13's global hierarchy. He became one of the most sought-after fugitives in the Western Hemisphere. The breakthrough came just a month later. In March 2025, Mexican federal agents captured Roman Bardales in the city of Veracruz. Rather than pursue local charges, they immediately expelled him to U.S. custody. On March 18th, he was intercepted by the FBI at the San Isidro border crossing in California and transported under heavy security to New York. The very next day, Roman Bardales was arraigned in federal court on Long Island, a location symbolically chosen, as MS-13 had long tormented communities there. He now faces RICO terrorism charges and a host of violent crime indictments. While his trial is still pending, His capture marked a significant blow to MS-13's command structure, a rare case where one of the gang's most secretive leaders was actually brought into the light. Law enforcement agencies cite Roman Bardales as proof that even the highest-ranking gang bosses, those who don't pull triggers themselves, but give the orders, can be tracked down, exposed, and held accountable.
Investigators say Giovanni Mosquera Serrano is the second in command of Tren de Aragua. They believe that he has been directing criminal operations here in the United States for this violent gang that started in a Venezuelan prison. Right now, he is facing several federal charges out of the Southern District of Texas, including for international drug trafficking and providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization. Earlier this year, the U.S. Department of State says Mosquera Serrano has overseen drug trafficking efforts and on behalf of TDA. The FBI tells me they don't have any indication that he's ever even been in the United States, but he may be connected to some violent crimes like murders, kidnappings, human trafficking, extortion, and more, including here in our area.
In June 2025, Giovanni Vicente Mosquera Serrano, known as El Viejo, became the first leader of Venezuela's Tren de Aragua to land on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. U.S. authorities are offering a $3 million reward for his capture, accusing him of trafficking, kidnapping, torture, and human trafficking. They've labeled him armed, dangerous, and a key figure in one of Latin America's most violent transnational gangs. Serrano rose through the ranks of Tren de Aragua as the gang expanded beyond Venezuela into Colombia, Peru, and the United States. Operating primarily from Colombia, he allegedly oversaw drug routes and brutal enforcement units, making him essential to the gang's expansion. In early 2025, after the U.S. formally designated Tren de Aragua a foreign terrorist organization, Serrano became one of the first members charged under terrorism statutes, a shift in how American authorities now treat organized crime. Federal agents say Serrano has ties to recent kidnappings and gang activity in U.S. cities like Houston and Aurora, Colorado. In one case, ICE agents linked him to the abduction of a migrant on U.S. soil, allegedly carried out by Venezuelan operatives under his command. These actions show how deeply the gang's reach has penetrated U.S. communities. Despite a massive manhunt, Serrano remains at large. Officials believe he may be hiding in South or Central America, or may have already slipped into the U.S. under a false identity. His addition to the most wanted list is a signal. The U.S. is no longer treating gangs like Tren de Aragua as just a local or regional problem, they're national security threats. With a $3 million reward and growing pressure from both sides of the political aisle, Serrano has become one of the most hunted fugitives in the Western Hemisphere. His capture is now seen as a critical step in dismantling a network that thrives on fear, violence, and international chaos.
Hey guys, good morning. An unusual move. The Justice Department now moving to drop charges against the man accused of being a top 3 MS-13 gang leader living here in Northern Virginia. This was someone described as taking part in violent gang activity.
FBI-led task force taking into custody 24-year-old Henry Josue Villatoro Santos. And court documents said that he was hiding in his mother's Dale City, Prince William County home at the time. Investigators also said they found firearms, ammunition, and suppressors in his bedroom. Now, we're told he entered the country illegally as a teen. He was actually charged with being an illegal alien in possession of a firearm. Not much mention of MS-13 activity in the arrest affidavit.
On the morning of March 27, 2025, federal authorities launched a high-stakes raid in Dale City, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. Their target, Henry Joshua Villatoro Santos, a 24-year-old alleged MS-13 gang leader who, according to officials, ranked among the top 3 most dangerous MS-13 figures operating inside the United States. FBI agents stormed the suburban home where Santos had been living with his family. Flashbang grenades echoed through the neighborhood. Inside a small upstairs bedroom, agents found him unarmed, hiding in a relative's room. He had reportedly been under surveillance for years, ever since entering the U.S. illegally at the age of 14. The arrest was immediately hailed as a major breakthrough. Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel called Santos a major East Coast leader of MS-13. Within hours, even President Trump took to social media to celebrate the takedown, describing it as a critical blow to the gang's American operations. But the story took a strange turn. Despite the fanfare, the charges filed against Santos were relatively limited. Illegal firearm possession, no racketeering, no deletions, no terrorism. Authorities recovered several unregistered handguns, ammunition, and MS-13 paraphernalia from his room, but there was no concrete evidence made public linking him to specific acts of violence or leadership in the gang. Then, just weeks later in April 2025, the Justice Department quietly dropped the case. The dismissal was without prejudice, meaning prosecutors could refile charges in the future. Still, it raised serious questions. Why was someone billed as one of the most dangerous gang leaders in the country released without trial? According to his defense attorney, the arrest was more political stunt than solid prosecution. Critics pointed to the lack of direct evidence presented in court, and even media outlets like the Associated Press noted that the federal filings were thin on details tying Santos to MS-13's command structure. At present, Henny Joshua Villatoro Santos remains in custody, not as a criminal defendant, but on immigration detainers, awaiting likely deportation to El Salvador. Whether he was a true mastermind or simply a scapegoat in a politically charged narrative remains unclear. But one thing is certain. The case highlights just how murky and complex gang enforcement has become. In the rush to dismantle MS-13, the line between intelligence, optics, and justice is often blurred. The rise of men like Hector Guerrero, Alexi Saenz, Roman Bardales, and Henny Villatoro Santos proves that modern gangs aren't just a police problem, they're a geopolitical one. These are not isolated acts of violence. They are the results of failed states, mass migration, corruption, and globalization. For many communities, the consequences have been devastating: children meeting their demise, families kidnapped, neighborhoods ruled by fear. But behind every arrest, behind every sentence, lies a deeper question. What happens when law enforcement can't keep up? When these leaders vanish, new ones rise to replace them. As long as the root causes remain poverty, displacement, power vacuums, so will the cycle of terror. These four men may be symbols of a larger war, but their stories remind us that the battlefield is no longer distant. It's already here.